Welcome everyone to today's Icehouse podcast and the special conversation focusing on resilience and wellness within our leaders. I'm sure you'll find this an incredible amount of value from this conversation, and so I do encourage you to stick around. Dr. Sven Hansen, he needs no introduction, especially for the owner-manager program alumni. But for those that don't know Sven, Sven is the founder of the Resilience Institute. The mission of the Resilience Institute is to promote sound physical, emotional, and mental well-being. And now it is more important than ever. The Resilience Institute empowers organizations and leaders who believe that when people grow, business grows. I really love that. Today, we're having a conversation based on a really recent article from the Resilience Institute called Leadership Now, How to Reconnect and Re-Energize. And we'll be discussing the common themes in leadership right now and actions you can take to support yourself and your teams really practically. So thank you so much, Sven, for joining us in this conversation.
Thank you, Bryar. Great pleasure to be part of the community again.
Yeah, and from Noosa, I hear.
Yes, I'm very blessed.
Very cool, very cool. It's awesome. Thank you. I know this is going to be extremely valuable to those listening. So I wanted to kick us off by saying, Sven, you talk to many leaders. What are the common themes that are presenting themselves at the moment, and any thoughts around those themes?
Yeah. So look, very briefly, I think it's important to be humble.
Yeah.
This is a very uncertain time, and any one of us only has one view on reality. I think what we've endured through COVID is going to be a challenge to recover from, and that's a known. But how long it'll actually take and what we should do is actually unknown, because to have isolation for as long a period as, particularly Auckland has had, is an extremely unusual situation. So many biologists are concerned and curious. What is it going to mean to come back? So I think, really important to start with that humility. I think, very briefly, and then you can maybe pick at which ones you think would be useful. The one thing that's been very consistent is many leaders are saying things like, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, I'm over it, I couldn't be bothered. Even last night, I'm thinking of getting a caravan and tripping away. So that's number one. And I think when leaders experience that sort of fatigue, we need to pay attention. Second theme, and this is more mixed, but I think it's very real. There are lots of leaders who are looking at their people, at their teams, and saying, I wonder how they're doing. There's real concern. So we've all seen people being affected in different ways. So it's great to be in Noosa, but the truth is I'm separated from my family and haven't seen my wife for months. Yeah. So we are all limping along with certain uncertainties. So the caring leaders, the leaders who really are thinking of how they rebuild into a future, are very concerned about their people. Who's struggling, who's doing well. So that theme is coming up pretty consistently. I think there's another one that's less well articulated, but it is a very uncertain time. When will this COVID thing finish? Will there be another, will the next influenza be really bad? What's going to happen at the COP26? Will we master climate change? Yeah. There are lots of unknowns as well. So it's an uncertain time. So I think people are feeling unsteady. What's in the future for my business? The third theme I think is a question that's emerging, is really asking the question, because we're not going to bounce back, are we? There is no bounce back. There's always bounce forward. So just simply the way we're meeting and communicating 2 years ago, we wouldn't have considered this. Now it's the way we all work. That's a big change. So the way we work, how we work, what a business looks like is altered forever. So creating a vision and hope, where are we going to go as a business and how do we take our people with it? That's definitely emerging. And then, there's just the common thing. How do we reconnect? How do we come out of the lockdowns? How do we re-energize the team? So those are the 5 themes I think we're seeing consistently.
And it's so hard, right? Because it differs person to person. Some people may be thriving in this season, and some people are really, really struggling. And so I think even I just had a few calls with some alumni today, and some people, yeah, just that, they're doing really well. Others really struggling, team members with kids at home, having to pull back hours, yet they're actually still busy. So they're having to get their head a lot more in the detail of their businesses, which is something they haven't had to do before. There's lots of differing situations. As a leader, really hard to put one blanket rule, right, over everything.
Absolutely right. And I think we have to be conscious also, for some people, this experience has really damaged their business.
Yeah.
They may not recover.
Yeah.
Others seem to have found a way to adapt and keep things going, and others have actually thrived. So there's that individual variation, but there's also a business industry, tourism. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
totally.
a tough gig, huh?
Very industry specific in certain ways. You look at hospitality and tourism, understandably, their whole business model and structure, which I was talking to someone in that industry the other day, and she said, I have to remind myself, like, I didn't do this to myself. It's not my failure. I still had a thriving business before that. I had a great business model. It's COVID that's done this, not, she has to remind herself it's not her, it's COVID that has done this. But yeah, everyone's dealing with different things. Wanting to sort of touch maybe on the first one, fatigue. What is some personal actions leaders can take for themselves, and then potentially team actions or things they can do for their team? I reading the article myself, the first something that jumped out at me when we're talking about fatigue and how to deal with it personally is have courage. Having courage to do things differently than you've done before. I don't know. Maybe you could talk a little bit more on that side of things.
Okay. Look, I think that there are some sort of foundations that are easy to forget. And, I'm talking to any leader who is feeling that kind of flatness. The first thing is you've got to name it. You've got to acknowledge it. You've got to say, okay, this is a problem. That's what we call name it. Then you've got to tame it. How do we, make it an objective issue and start to reduce its impact on us? And then how do we move in a different direction? So, in a nutshell, what we've got to understand is that an imposed lockdown is a very abnormal state. It's almost like being imprisoned in solitary confinement.
Wow.
And for many people, that's exactly what it's been, locked in their bedrooms for months on end. Now, that damages the entire neurobiology of our immune system, of our heart, our lungs, our empathy, our connection system. So we are in a very, compromised state when we feel tired. So how do we take that? I think, one of the points, go see your doctor. We discussed that a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
It's a damn good time to do that. And what if it's not just COVID fatigue? What if as a leader, there is something else going? So I would be very humble, very courageous, and be willing to say, you know what, I'm going to get myself checked out.
Yeah, that's such a great point.
Yeah, and you may go to an executive health clinic, but why not also just go to your GP? Hopefully they know you, they'll have your records, and at least they can get you headed in the right direction. And you know what? For 95% or more people, it's going to end up being reassurance. You've named it. You've been reassured. The problem is mitigated, and if needed, you've got some nudges to move back in the right direction. Having said that, I think the key, and the one that, wow, it's really, really hard for every one of us, but particularly for leaders, you must establish and maintain your daily rhythms.
Yeah, routine.
This is so important. The COVID, the lockdown, the change in the way our business is operating, it's utterly disrupted our normal rhythms. Humans love rhythm. Even your sleep cycles, your biological cycles, your hormones, everything runs to rhythms. So you've got to find a way to put in place the daily rhythms that nurture you.
Yeah, great.
So, we talk about be fit, 30 minutes, sleep, nail it. Take some time, 8 minutes a day to breathe slow and easy. Really work on being alert to your emotions and dialed into the emotions of others, and keep your mind, and maybe for many this is the most important, in the present moment. So often we end up in a conversation and we're babbling on about COVID, we're blaming governments, and we're talking about what's happening in this place and what should be happening in that place. It's unnecessary time. Try to be present for what matters in your life and those close to you.
Yeah, I like that. Try and narrow it down into, what matters, what's aligned to your purpose as an individual. Yeah, that's gold. I like that. And also, a really important note, stick to a routine where you can. Really try to find something that works for you, that fills your tank, but also is, working holistically with your mind and your body. I like that.
And I'd go so far as to say, if you are, as a leader, and I think of all the owner managers I've met over the years, if you're struggling with this one, reach out to a coach, even
Great.
if it's a virtual coach, someone who just connects with you and reminds you some of those key elements. It's really important. Get that nailed. If there's ever a time, when things are easy, you can let your rhythms go a bit, but when things are like they are, you must double down and be non-negotiable.
Great. Be courageous. Talk to someone external, to your business, to your world, to sort of be a bit of a sounding board. I like that. Is there anything practical from what our leaders can do for their teams?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still learning, how this happens best, but let me share some observations. Teams that are functioning well, most of them are meeting on a daily basis. So they're recognizing that this fatigue, listlessness, demotivation is risky. So they're meeting with their core teams. And I think, when you as an owner manager, look at your business, identify who your critical leaders are, particularly people leaders, and I would establish a daily rhythm, like a daily stand-up, in the Scrum methodology, simply to, even if it's on a call, Bryar, how are you traveling today? Zip, listen. All right, I want to know about how you're going physically, if there's anything emotional, if there's something mental maybe. So you show that you care, and as a leadership team, you are, I guess, prioritizing your leadership well-being. If you just rush into the crisis, which is what many of us are doing, or just working through the daily grind, you wear your people down. So if you can prioritize that regular meeting to connect in as human beings, and maybe it's a key question like, is there anything you need help with today, Bryar?
Yeah, wow.
If you've got 5 minutes at the end of the day, I would really appreciate your view on something I'm trying to complete. So, that is just stand-up Scrum methodology applied to leadership.
And it doesn't take long either, just that quick 10-minute check-in, 5-minute, whatever works for you. It's so doable, and makes the person on the other side of that call feel really valued, and sort of seen and known, which I think is so important, because when you're stuck at home, your teams will be feeling disconnected or not connected to the wider team. So it's so easy to just check in really quickly. Great practical tip.
Absolutely.
Nice. Another sort of key common theme was the concern for people. Any thoughts on that and personal actions leaders can take for that? Because it is hard. You're trying to keep yourself afloat, but then you've got teams that vary in size that are looking to you for a vision and a plan. Any personal actions leaders can take in that space.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'd reassure most leaders is some of your people will probably be thriving.
Yes.
They're actually finding this works. So don't assume everyone's in trouble.
Yeah.
There's almost what we're seeing out there is a bimodal distribution. Some people are actually doing quite well, some not doing so well. So keep that in mind.
Good point.
What you described so well, Bryar, is that when you're struggling, your ability to dial into the needs of others is compromised. So you've got to think of the empathy function as a muscle or a portal. And it's really important now to be able to open that empathy portal and take time for people. So in a way, that daily stand-up is empathy for the leadership team. Then as a leadership group, and I like the idea of making it not just the CEO, it's actually a leadership team thing, is how do we then step it down a level? You know, how do we encourage everyone in the leadership group to also check in with each of their teams? You know, that way you're showing an organization that there is genuine care, genuine interest, and you're going to work forward to solve this challenge.
Yeah.
You know, everyone's different too. Some of us are very good at this. Some of us really struggle with it. So I think maybe in that team area is for leaders to be conscious, you know, well, Sven's not so good at that. You know, team him up with someone who is good at that.
Yeah.
It's quite important right now, you know, and I think balancing your leadership team through that is hugely, hugely important.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Maybe a thought, you know, we often with the Icehouse programs, we run things like a diagnostic, you know, or kind of promote that sort of thing, but maybe this is a good time to do some kind of survey just to check in with your people.
Yeah, wow.
Having said that, you know, if your leadership team is checking in with each member and each of your leadership team is checking in with their direct reports, wow, that's pretty good checking in.
Yeah, it's great insight right there. Eh?
Yeah. So if you've got that discipline as an organization, you know, then these tools become less necessary.
And it's just a great thing to then carry on the other side of this, whenever that is, to be able to constantly
100%.
be checking in. I think even from a business perspective, it means that you've got a better touch point on your employees, that you know exactly how they're finding the job, where they're wanting to head. You can sort of foresee things, and things won't come out of the blue. When problems or wins or challenges arise, you'll be right on top of it. Which is a great tool for leadership in general.
Absolutely. And, you know, respecting the fact that it's quite a hard discipline to put in place in difficult times.
Yeah.
You're so right. If you can pull it off now, wow, that really says a lot about where your business might be going.
Yeah, totally. I'm sure the companies and businesses that had something like this in place, it's really benefited them at this time. Yes. And so it's not too late. You know, you can implement it now, and it will so help you in the future.
And I actually have seen some really good examples of that.
You
know, maybe an angle on that one, Brian, and it links to a number of these points, but it came up in a conversation with an organization yesterday. That leadership team, when you think about how you support the leadership team in communicating with the organization, I think it's important to consider the staging of what you communicate. So if you've got a message, to really ask the question, how do we want this to come across?
Yeah.
You know, what would be the best way to communicate? When is the best time to put that out? Is there anyone we should check in with before we do it who might be affronted or, you know, compromised by it? So, you know, the word came up yesterday of staging. There are some great organizations that are taking that very seriously at the moment, of thinking about, you know, this is a tricky time. We need to choose our language very carefully.
Yeah.
And make sure that when we deliver a message of care and encouragement for our people, it's really well communicated.
Yeah, because those are the sorts of communications that, you know, the team are looking out for. They read as soon as they hit the inbox. They're wanting to know what support or vision or plan there is. And so, yeah, it is important to communicate that clearly. Clear as kind.
Also, I'm not as close to it as you are, but, you know, I watch from a distance colleagues dealing with our government's daily announcements.
Yes.
I don't think that's particularly well staged. It's being staged with no hope.
Yeah.
now there are lots of different, no one's going to get this absolutely right, but the truth is you have to give people a sense of vision. Right at the moment, the doors just keep closing on us. So every day, New Zealand is sending out a message from people on high.
Yeah.
There is no future. There's no end, and the goals we need to achieve are looking hard, right? So
yeah,
that's
totally.
poor staging. That's poor leadership.
Yeah, it is. Oh, it's just really hard at the moment. And I said it just then, but yeah, I like to carry this thought from Brene Brown. I think I heard it, that clear is kind. And that, that's something that we look for in those high level leadership and government and that sort of thing as well. Business owners need clear outlooks onto where we're heading, what the plan is, what they can and can't do, and the clearer it is, the kinder it is. So completely agree.
And I'd add to that, clarity, clear perspective is hope.
Yeah.
So when you're staging, when you're thinking about how you communicate to people, make sure there's a message of hope. Something I've said to people is you don't have to get everything right.
Yeah.
You will make mistakes. You look at what Boris Johnson did in the UK. Pretty brave, open the country, and there are going to be infections, there are going to be deaths, but we need to return people. Wow. Okay, so it's not a perfect solution.
Yeah.
But it gave many people hope, and it allowed their society to move forward. Difficult, very difficult.
Yeah. Oh, very difficult. It's hard. Like you said, no one's going to get it 100% right.
Exactly.
But it is important that we instill hope and that we're clear in our communication. And so, yes, from a government perspective, but also from a leader of a business, that is just as important. That's great. Next one, because we could, I have like 3 more points I could say on that one, but we'll move on to the next one. Moving into the unknown. So yeah, that feeling of unknown. Is there any sort of practical personal actions or team actions business owners and leaders can take?
I think, Ben, we sort of mentioned it before, but the one that I'm finding is most helpful for people is be really disciplined about what you focus your mind on. We have so much news and so many devices feeding us all kinds of stuff. A lot of that is not good food.
Yeah.
So disciplining your mind to what matters is the key to this. I would hope that most leaders are asking the question, yes, it's uncertain, but we have a way to do good. We can be a force for good.
Yeah.
So, making sure there is a clear purpose in the organization. We're not going to solve all the world's problems, but here's how we are going to contribute. Yeah. This is how we're going to make a difference. So, my sense of that purpose, it needs to have some, I use the word nobility, but it needs to be something that people say, wow, okay, that's pretty cool. Well done. We need that at the moment, to be feeling like we're doing the right thing. And it comes back again to that sense of hope.
Definitely.
So I think as businesses, to really go back to your mission and then to allow yourself to be present and say, okay, right now, is that going to help me achieve this mission? Or, could I direct my attention more precisely?
Yeah.
Worrying about COVID or worrying about some climate change issue, it's not going to help you. It's just going to make things more uncertain.
Yeah. I like what you said, that we can't do everything, but we can do something. Yes. And when every business, I'm really passionate about this, I harp on about it, but if every business was to, really hone in on what their mission is, what their purpose is beyond making profit, and if every business sort of picked something that they really supported or added, and was a force for good, that collective impact is really significant. And so business owners don't need to feel overwhelmed that, they can't sort of solve the world's problems, but they can just take tiny steps forward, and that will will grow as they go, the impact that they're having. And also it's just good for people. I think society is heading in that direction. They want to feel a sense of purpose in their work and with the businesses that they support. And so COVID's definitely shaken that up as well, really.
Oh, dead right. And it has a very straight business ROI risk management issue. People call this the mass resignation, I think.
Yes, I've been reading about that.
Millions of people checking out. Well, the truth is I know one organization where already they're losing critical people.
Wow.
Now, if you could just keep one of those critical people an extra month because they thought, actually, this is worth doing. But, if I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about moving and I think, this is just pointless. Why am I even, there is no point. It's a really strong incentive to leave. So, being clear about that purpose, the nobility of that, the compassion in it, doing something good for the world, it can help you keep your best people in the business and on game.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, completely agree. It's great. I like that. Nice. Next one here, we've got lead forward. Any thoughts on that? Or something that stuck out to me was, generate hope, which we've talked about, but vision, plan, and engage action. Yeah.
I do worry about that. I actually worry about it for ourselves. Every business I'm talking about, we have been imprisoned. So it has been a real blow to strategy, frankly.
Yeah.
And I think also a blow to the growth of people. Now, there are a few organizations who I think have really capitalized on this and done it well, but most of us haven't. So I think it's just all the point there, just encourage any leader to think about is, are you allocating enough time to future vision, strategy, and people development?
Yeah.
It's so easy in these sort of times just to hunker down and do the daily grind and go from one crisis to the next. And you get a lot of avoidance. I listened to a young gun last night, and just his organization's perception about how unproductive some people are becoming at home.
Wow.
Maybe originally people were getting productive. Well, now they're seeing that drop back a lot. So I think we really do need to think about where are we going in the future, and are we allocating enough time to at least create some scenarios. May not work out, right? Lockdown may end tomorrow, it may end in a month, we just don't know.
Yeah.
But have a plan.
Yeah.
Have a plan and prepare your people for it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. I noted that you said, the article said, 50% of your day at least should be spent focusing on, the vision and your people. And I think even in the calls and the conversations I'm having with some of our community, as your team and your people tend to struggle and need more time for personal reasons, the owner finds themselves then getting, working in the business, not on it. Which is, something that would be very familiar to owner managers through the program, but they're finding that they're getting to that point, and then the vision, the plan, the people stuff is suffering, which is a really hard thing to balance, right? Any thoughts?
And just to underpin that, I spoke with a COO yesterday who said, at best we can hope for 5%.
Wow.
I mean, I think 50% is a big goal, right? Yeah. And you may well not achieve that. But you're not going to lead forward on 5%.
No, at best, no.
You're actually going to be slipping back. It's leadership, right? The fundamental definition of leadership versus management. And as you said right at the beginning, Bryar, this actually, at the end of the day, is going to come down to courage.
Yeah.
Step up. This is a difficult time. Difficult times are designed for human leadership to step forward.
Yeah.
If you want to lead, now's the time.
Yeah,
and it requires, focusing on the future, focusing on people.
Yeah, and heading back to some of the notes I made to the points before, but empathy takes energy. It's not an easy thing to do. Yes. So for some leaders, that means being bold, stepping out of their comfort zone, being courageous. But Yeah, it is actually going to take time. It's not an easy thing that can be 5%, or par, yeah.
And while we try to simplify these things, they're interconnected, aren't they?
Yeah.
So on the one hand, you're getting the message, be bold, step forward, take a risk. You have to then think about, what's my daily rhythm like? Am I actually leading my own self so that I can do that? Well, if you're not, if you're feeling flat and wiped out, it's dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah. And so it links back to that personal routine and
absolutely.
Yeah, it all links.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah,
and there's a serious, it's maybe just a point I think we need to work on at the moment. There's an individual responsibility and there's an organizational responsibility. It's shared. I think far too many leaders are saying, it's your job. You look after yourself. I'm paying you. Your job is to make sure you step up to work and you can do your job. So that person is saying it's all your responsibility. I think it's good to put it on the individual, but then to also, as an organization, ask yourself, how do we support our people with that? How do we make it easier for Bryar and our colleagues to really thrive in these times?
Yeah.
I think that shared role, very important. And it's quite interesting listening to Queensland using this, of saying, look, as government, we're trying the best we can to keep you safe and to provide you all the opportunities for care and vaccinations. Now you need to step forward.
Yeah, there is some personal responsibility, but let's set a good foundation.
And to be able to communicate that shared model is very powerful.
Yeah, that is powerful. That's great. Oh, so much gold in this conversation. Thank you, Sven. Finishing up sort of the idea. So there was a graphic that came with the article, and I'll make sure it's in the show notes for those listening. But really practical and specific ideas around how to reconnect and re-energize. Is there anything you want to touch on in that space?
Well, I think that graphic kind of captures the key points, and we've actually covered them.
Yeah, I might read them out if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. We can even share it. Would you like me to share it?
On the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it. That's a good idea.
Here we go. You see that?
Yep, that's awesome.
Yeah, so, the whole idea is to try and keep people really in the moment, present, focused. And I think we've covered these points. Maybe just the bottom two, reestablish those, hope and be willing to get it wrong. And there's a little bit of never surrender.
Yeah,
it's a bit of a fight, this one, and you have to be willing to battle on a bit. Yeah, totally. For those that are listening audio only, I'm just going to read them out, if that's okay, Sven, just so that they can have that. But one being, testing times calls for courageous leadership. We've definitely touched on that in this conversation. Take good care of your team and make sure they care for their teams. Same with that one. Delegate the grind and allocate 50% of your time to strategy and people. Generate hope. It is okay to get it wrong. I really like that. It's actually okay as a leader to get things wrong. It doesn't need to be 100% right, but it does need to generate hope. Take excellent care of yourself. Fatigue, apathy, and exhaustion are not options. I love that. That's very clear. They are not options. Connect regularly with your people and demonstrate empathy. Empathy takes energy. Articulate your plans with clear vision and enthusiasm, and never surrender. Just incredible tips for how to reconnect and re-energize as a leader in these times. Thanks, Sven and the team, for putting those together. Oh, great. And maybe a last thought as well, when you provide hope and you try and you launch something, sometimes you get it wrong. Don't hesitate to apologize. Yes. So, almost as we sit here having this conversation with 4 leaders, I really want to say, look, if we didn't meet your needs today, I'm sorry. Yeah. We tried, right? And there's, as we said, right in the beginning, lots of variety, lots of variation. There's a couple of different points of view. To be willing to apologize is very helpful, to allow us to move on and maintain hope. Totally. And I think people get behind that if you're honest. You're just authentic. People realize we're all human, and it's not weak to say,
sorry. Yeah, it's a
the
really
ultimate strength.
yeah, it is the ultimate strength. It actually puts you back in control in a way. So yeah, it's really good. Great stuff. To really finish this conversation off, Sven, further to resources like these, and we'll definitely be sure to link other articles from the Resilience Institute. Where can business owners go for help if they need it in these times?
Once again, one's got to think carefully about what's going to work for you. I mean, clearly there are lots of businesses who are engaging people like ourselves and Bryar and others to help with this. I think it's a good time for that. So don't be afraid to bring professionals in to initiate conversations.
Brilliant.
Second, I think it's useful for leaders to be sure you have some kind of EAP for your people.
Yeah, great.
All right. And as we said earlier, as the leader, we talked about getting a health check. Go see a doctor. Sometimes, look, it may absolutely be fine to go to the Mental Health Foundation. They've got wonderful resources. But, my experience has been that quite often a leader likes the connection, the personal relationship. This is actually the sort of time that gives you a really good example of why you should have a GP.
Yeah, definitely.
Who you know that you have a relationship with, who is going to respect your privacy, where you can be honest, vulnerable. So I would really recommend that. And, your GP may be able to solve the problem. As I said, 95% of the time it's reassurance. But they can also direct you to better specialized resources.
Yeah, this is a great place to start. So thank you for mentioning that, because an important point that, you can go see your GP in these times and have a conversation that's private and safe, and they can guide you and lead you to the next right step if that's needed. So awesome. Thank you so much, Ben, for your time and your wisdom. Incredible gold, and I know those listening and watching would have really appreciated the insight that you shared. It's helping them be better leaders, to be more resilient, and to re-energize in this time. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bryar.